So, welcome to Data Left Unattended. This is obviously not a technical session, so if you were expecting a deep dive into how to improve the performance of your Spark jobs in notebooks in the Fabric pipeline, you're probably in the wrong place. This is me. I'm a psychotherapist in my own practice of 20-some years. I deal with a load of aspects of mental health. I use neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behaviour therapy. I work a lot more these days within the IT community. I have the 4 best therapists in the universe. They've all got 4 legs. They all have watertight NDAs as long as I feed them. And I live with the beard in the beautiful countryside of the southwest of England. So in order to be able to talk about burnout, I need to actually take us back to what burnout actually is, because as with any new buzzword, it's become overused and less well identified. So it does involve work-life balance. It does involve hot desking, working from home, hybrid, returning to the office, but it is a predominantly workplace-based and caused phenomenon. It is predominantly in the workplace, but then we feel the symptoms of it at home in the personal life. That impact is what's been lost in the smoke, and that's what I'm going to try and help us with today. In order to be able to diagnose accurately, within my industry, we use 3 medically defined sets of symptoms and feelings. Again, we remember that workplace and burnout is the cause. The issues are within the workplace. Although the effects are felt outside, it's important that we understand the solutions are also found within the workplace. This one is so obvious, but so well overlooked. There's a massive difference between being tired, between putting in lots of hours and getting stuff done, and being completely depleted of energy. When you are this exhausted, sleeping goes out of the window, you lose motivation, you become irritable, the sense of hopelessness becomes a downward spiral. Individuals begin to feel so emotionally drained and fatigued by the cumulative stress in their professional lives and environment that even existing outside of work becomes nigh on impossible. This dimension of burnout involves adopting a cynical, detached perspective towards colleagues, management, friends, family, and it's marked by an unfeeling, impersonal attitude, not just towards those around you, but towards yourself, especially when this is a marked change from what you've expected from someone. This outlook negatively affects every single relationship within work and within your family and friends group. Self-image declines massively, leads to a feeling of isolation, disconnection. That disconnect manifests itself both in the workplace and at home. This part of burnout refers to the feeling of ineffectiveness. It's a lack of success within the workplace. This is not imposter syndrome or phenomenon, although it does share some of the signs and symptoms. Burnout runs so much deeper than the feeling of just not being as good as the people around you at the job. People experience this part of burnout, feel unproductive, struggle to find meaning, which means any type of job satisfaction goes out of the window. And this will further intensify the downward spiral within burnout. These 3 signs and symptoms are obviously not the most exhaustive list. There are subgroups of signs and symptoms within them, but these are the most commonly used and therefore the most commonly experienced diagnostic list that we use to actually categorize someone as being in burnout. to effectively address burnout, since it affects so many parts of so many pieces of our lives, a completely holistic approach is necessary. This includes fostering a healthy work-life balance, engaging in regular self-care, and maintaining open communication, both within the workplace and in your personal life. So we get to look at some of the things that we can do. And this is a cliche, and everyone's going, exercise. Well, obviously, it is cliched and it is obvious, but there is no question that regular exercise will reduce stress. It will improve mood. It will boost overall health. Activities like walking, yoga, any form of exercise that you enjoy will be beneficial. You don't need to go and run every day. You don't need to swim the channel. You simply need to do something that doesn't involve sitting in front of a screen, something that feeds your soul. Go outside and touch the grass. Sit next to a tree and feel the earth beneath you, which sounds daft and very dippy hippie, but actually it's one of the most effective ways to start to break that ever-decreasing circle you find yourself trapped in. Start to realize that you have to make yourself unavailable and just focus on yourself. This is really difficult within the workplace. But take yourself away from all of the screens and all of the stimulation, which takes you away from the causes of the stress. And yes, again, it's another cliche and it's relatively straightforward, but again, it's far too important for us to overlook. Unfortunately, a study in the States last year showed that IT professionals are in the top 5 worst job categories for poor diet. They are most likely to thrive on caffeine, chocolate, sugar, and junk food. And unfortunately, all of those things are horrifically detrimental to your cognitive health. Your physical health will suffer, and it is oh so easy to sit at your desk and eat your Mackie D's over your keyboard. This is not helping. This is not helping you physically, it's not helping your energy levels, and it's certainly not helping you deal with the stress or providing you a structure. You don't need to suddenly become calorie obsessed or to subscribe to the latest weight loss fad. You don't have to fast for 19 hours and eat turmeric for 20 minutes every day. Just work on cutting out excess sugar. Eat less fast food, less ultra-processed food, because by cutting these things out, the benefit to your health and general well-being is massive. This is especially important for your brain and your cognitive function, which you need to be optimized in order to deal with burnout. And yes, it's another one. It's obvious, it's cliched, but it is a massive recommendation. Participating in some activity, some form of a something that is not work, that brings you pleasure and a degree of relaxation, is proven to help you to reduce your stress levels. And this can be anything from reading or gardening, painting, any hobby that you find fulfilling. If, like someone I'm very familiar with, one of your hobbies happens to be writing code or reorganizing the Home Assistant to do more funky things around the already fully automated house, I'm not going to tell you to give up doing that because that's pointless and unfair, but find a point of difference. Differentiate from work mode to hobby mode. In the Beard's world, this means he's banned from going out into the office when it's not working. He can sit in the front room on his laptop and write code, but that point of difference is really important. You need to find that for yourself, the one that works best for you. This is just basic common sense, but burnout can have a massively detrimental effect on our sleep patterns. Will leave you sleeping not enough or too much or an odd mixture of the two. And too much sleep is not just the occasional lie-in that we need after a good Friday night out. And too little sleep is not just that 4 a.m. wide awake mode where our brain decides that we really do need to consider whether penguins have knees and how do dragons blow out candles. But this on a repeated pattern when night after night you're awake or morning after morning you can't get out of bed, especially when this differs from your norm. Sleep is the most vital part of our daily lives. It's where our brain and our body recharge. If you're not sleeping, you're not recharging. And if your sleep quality is poor, you're not recovering. This is the least scientific thing I have, but techniques such as mindfulness, meditation, deep breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation will help you to manage stress. It will reduce the symptoms of burnout that cause the stress. And I know it sounds a little bit dippy hippie, but we can all access a 5-minute break, a 5-minute program on our phones. And if all you do for 5 minutes is close your eyes and focus on your breathing, this will bring your stress levels down markedly. Self-care will help you to reduce your stress levels. Good diet will help you feel physically and emotionally stronger. Better sleep will follow. But burnout is cumulative. No one goes into work on a Monday morning feeling totally fine and then leaves at 5:30 totally burnt out. So the solutions to burnout are also cumulative. They take time because unfortunately there just is no quick fix. So let's look at what a healthy team is, because the health of the team in your workplace is what will determine whether or not you face burnout. There are so many ways that we can build and maintain positive relationships with those around us, with the people we regularly interact with, both in the workplace and in our personal lives. We find that the same guidelines in both those sections of our life will apply. So we don't need extra separate strategies for dealing with each part of our world. Managing your team has benefits in your home life. Benefits in your home life will give you the strength to help to manage your life within a team. Burnout puts you in a position where you have lost control. Being able to start to manage the causes of burnout puts you back into a position of control. And we are all, by definition, to some degree, control freaks. So we're going to do some more management buzzwords because they're everywhere, but let's make them into something less buzzy. So what does a positive, healthy team dynamic look like? Every single person who ever hears me ask this question will have a different and unique idea. Most, sadly, will have a very clear picture of what a bad, negative team dynamic looks like. And every one of us has our own unique take on what we think would be the most healthy, proactive team dynamics. And this doesn't matter whether you're the most junior DBA, you're a PM, you're a C-level, you're the company owner. There are obvious issues that every single person has a role to play in. A good team dynamic is like any other relationship that we ever form. It needs a framework, it needs effort, understanding, listening and being heard. It needs patience, awareness, it needs recognition. and a million more things that everybody would be able to add. So how do we find a less complex approach so that we can all start to implement this? So we choose our own groups of friends. Outside of work, we have separate groups of friends. In the workplace, we start with a group of people that we want to make into a team, or people already in a team that you're joining. And when I'm saying team, this applies equally to friend or family group. Simply by putting a group of people together, we do not combine all of those unique individuals, those unique skills, experiences, beliefs, personalities, expertise. All we do is create a team in name only. Because of the way we choose our own groups of friends outside of work, most of us will have different groups of friends who we keep quite separate from one another. We have the community, the fellow IT professionals, the cycling group, the cricket team, the couples, friends, and most of us would never dream of trying to combine those into one super friend group because we know it would be disastrous. So why would your team at work be any different? Your team will have a core group, but also a much wider group of people from across the organization, your customers, your clients, your end users. In your friends and family group, the same is true. We all have that very tight-knit core group, the ones we could phone at 3 a.m, who would rock up with a bar of chocolate and a bottle of wine. The ones that we probably wouldn't phone till 9 a.m, but would come and make coffee. And then the next group out that we'd probably talk to about our problems if and when we saw them. Your work team is no different to this. In order to foster that positive team dynamic, managers and team members have an equal role to play. People will not necessarily always get on with each other, and in the environment within the workplace, that's magnified. So to foster that positive team dynamic, we need to put some tools in our toolbox. We need to point out that the quickest way to kill a team is to put into place unrealistic expectations. It happens so often. People are so used to it happening that they don't look at it as something that they have the ability to change. But expecting a large project to be completed in an unreasonably short time frame without any extra support is simply setting your team up to fail. If you assume that your team, your managers, your C-levels, your PMs are going to be available and respond to messages instantly 24/7 during the night, at weekends when they're on vacation, that's going to kill your team morale. If you don't allow room for mistakes, because we all make them, you don't give people learning curves and growth opportunities, you're going to destroy your team. When your expectations are unclear or unrealistic, it leads to stress. It leads to negative impact on people's mental health, and it contributes to burnout, which then contributes to decreased job satisfaction, which means the team will self-destruct. So if you're constantly shifting the target, how is anyone ever going to be able to succeed? So what can we do that will help us to avoid these issues? And I mean, this one seems obvious because it is, but again, it's so often overlooked. We absolutely start with a terms and expectations agreement. If we don't have that, we have no defined goal. If we don't have a defined goal, no one within that team can achieve success. And if you can't achieve success, how do you measure your ability to do your job? We have to put terms and expectations in place in order to produce that healthy team. Simple things that we can do that change the way those expectations work within a team is make sure we have agendas, make sure daily meetings only contain the people who have to be there. As a manager, give your team members the right to decide whether they really need to spend an hour in that huddle, wash-up meeting, whatever you want to call it. Because we've all been in those meetings where we're not needed. We're giving and taking nothing, and we're probably all in a WhatsApp or a Slack chat behind the scenes talking about other things that we find more important. Make this something that stops happening because it's horribly divisive. How to put different discussions on workplace culture in place starts with your onboarding. As management, you're responsible for ensuring that this process is documented and freely available to everyone, and not just to team members, to your management team, to your C-levels, because everybody within the team should be able to access these terms, these agreements at all times, because everybody needs to be reminded how to keep the best parts of these going. When you start a job, you wouldn't possibly take it on without being given a detailed and accurate job description. It would include the skills you're expected to bring, the responsibilities you're required to have. But it would also include the responsibilities of the management to provide things for you. Defining and communicating measurable objectives reviews that process on a regular basis. It means that there are always goals in place, there are always expectations, and you know what's going to happen. You know what the terms of this agreement is. In the workplace, agreeing upon terms fosters the most positive and productive environment. And if you're being productive, the teamwork and the communication between the team and management will follow. This is probably one of the most important pieces of information. It's something that I know a lot of people find easier said than done. Sadly, an awful lot of women in tech find that setting boundaries and saying no is much harder than, sadly, for most men within the industry. It's beginning to change, but it is so important to set out clear boundaries. If you have nothing that defines the break between work and personal life, you become a conveyor belt. You never stop. You never get to a point where you know what you're doing, because work bleeds into the evening, personal life bleeds into work, and your brain never gets time to reassess, to put things into a filing cabinet and order the chaos. And this sounds really complicated sometimes, because as soon as you set boundaries, it feels that people are going to test them, and they will. And that's the whole point of putting a boundary in place. And this might involve limiting the number of clients that you see per day. It might involve scheduling regular breaks where you're away from your screen. It might involve being a manager who ensures people get their time off. Using do not disturb features to indicate focus times and to avoid interruptions. Sticking to these, it gets easier the more you do it, and your team will start to build these together. And once you start to build it as a team, it becomes the norm. I know that with a lot of work from home, there's time differences. Trying to find times to communicate with clients and your teammates in different parts of the world, in different time zones, has become far more of an issue in the last few years. But you have these wonderful tools within your technologies, as I discovered about 6 months ago, when my husband pointed out that I didn't need to wait until 10 p.m. in the evening to send an email so that it was in the right time zone, but you could schedule it. and it would do it automatically. Who knew? I would hope that most of you do know that, and use that. Use your work hours as that agreement. Use those to set that boundary. Because if you're contracted to work 40 hours a week, outside of that time is not somewhere where you need to still be working. I see so many of you sat in a restaurant, sat in a bar, out with friends, checking emails on your phone. And I pull people up on this so often. Yeah, is that work? Are you getting paid for that? Are you supposed to be answering email at 10 o'clock at night? And 9 times out of 10, the response to that is, well, no, but someone was going to send an email through. So leave it till the morning. Unless you're on call or expected to be responding at 10 p.m, leave it till the morning. It's unlikely that anything terrible is going to happen before 8 a.m. And if it is, then someone needs to make it a priority to fix it, but you don't. And these boundaries define our friendships and our relationships just as clearly as they do our work lives. Nobody would enter into a new relationship with a potential husband or wife if they had no boundaries, if they had no expectations, if they hadn't had the conversation about, I want to get married and live on a desert island, where the other wants to never get married and go and live in London. So we set boundaries in every part of our world. The ones in our work life should be just as clear as the ones that we have in our personal life. And don't be afraid to say no. Saying no is often the hardest thing to do. It's so much easier if your manager comes to you at 29 minutes past 5 and says, oh, can you just? Well, no. Say no. If you stop allowing people to take from you more than you're prepared to give, you actually start to protect yourself. If you're comfortable and happy with the boundaries you set, it means that that example becomes something you lead with. And when people around you can see that these boundaries work, they're far more likely to set their own. And once everyone within your team starts to follow this pattern, you have a respect between that team and its members. That means that when people do want something outside of those boundaries, there's a far more open communication channel, and people are far more likely to do something when it's not expected of them, when it's not something that happens all the time. So set a boundary. Make sure that you're comfortable with what you're agreeing to do, and don't be afraid to say no to the things that fall outside that boundary. Communication is the obvious part of a team. It has to be an obvious part of a team. But so often it's one way, it's overlooked. Honest, transparent communication builds a trust that your team and your peers will not be able to create without it. This improves engagement, it improves innovation, it produces productivity levels that you want to see. If you're not communicating with the people around you, your input, your wishes, your suggestions, your views, your wants are not being heard. And if you're not happy and comfortable with the existing channels of communication, or if they're not working for you, speak out. Whether you're a DBA, a project manager, a C-level, if it's not working, people do not have crystal balls. People are not usually able to read your mind. If it's not working for you, speak out. Things never change unless people understand that they need to. Establishing clear communication channels is often a responsibility of management. But again, management don't have crystal balls. So when you set up and maintain channels for communication, such as regular team meetings, one-on-one check-ins, you use Zoom and Teams and all of your digital tools, make sure that everybody buys into this. because there's no point having that Slack channel, that WhatsApp group that works behind the scenes if it cuts people out of those conversations. If you feel that you're having to talk to people behind the scenes, something's going wrong with your communication, and it won't change unless you open your mouth and talk about it. More and more these days, we're becoming international. We have diverse perspectives, we have different cultures. Foster an environment where that diversity becomes inclusive. Learn from the people whose culture is different to yours. Work out that language can be an issue, that barriers to communication can be cultural. There are still an awful lot of teams within an awful lot of larger companies that have such an outdated hierarchical structure. That in itself is a barrier to communication. And there's no point having a C-level sat in an office who has absolutely no direct line of communication with his team. If needs be, as a team manager, provide the training, provide the resources to help your team members to improve those communication skills. And as a team member, if you feel that there's something missing, ask for it. If you're not asking to include these things that will help, nobody's going to do them for you. And often something that you're thinking is missing is something others are thinking too. So be the voice that speaks for people and start to make those changes. This one always draws a little bit of a huff from some older hierarchical structured male-dominated management teams. This is so important, and yet it is so simple and so often overlooked. You recognise someone's effort as a contribution rather than an obligation. The morale of your team will improve instantly. The teamwork becomes strengthened, and overall organisational success will follow. Just because something is expected doesn't mean it doesn't need to be recognised by others. Or maybe you should acknowledge something that you see someone else has done. And it takes no time. It takes so little effort. Doing it publicly just magnifies it. So in a team meeting, whether it is peer-to-peer or as a manager, point out that, oh, William, dude, the work you did last week has moved this project forward so rapidly. It was amazing. We're all really grateful. It takes seconds, and yet for the rest of the day, William certainly is going around feeling appreciated. And the people around him in the team are also going to start to feel that people recognise what they're doing. Just because it's your job, just because it's what's expected of you, doesn't mean that it can't be recognised. Just saying thank you to someone for making a positive impact, but it will lift everyone within the team. And this is another one where some people who like paperless offices, like the beard, will cringe slightly. But I'm old and slightly old-fashioned. And for the time it takes you to write a stick-it note and put it on someone's monitor that just says, William, you're amazing, thank you. The feedback from that will blow away the whole need to not have paper in the office. I still think and still believe that a little stick-it note with someone's appreciation on that you actually take home with you doesn't just last for that day, can last into the next project. And again, it takes no time at all. And again, it's not just a management responsibility. If William sees that Ben's doing something amazing, there's no reason for William not to say, Ben, you're amazing. Ben will go, well, yes, I know. But it still feels like something that's important. Encouraging peer-to-peer recognition can be done as a management structure. We can have a program where you have nominations for Employee of the Week. Conversely, you can have nominations for the Wooden Spoon of the Week. It starts to involve people within a team dynamic that builds the team's success as a whole. Celebrating milestones as a team are huge. So not just the end of that specific project, but the end of the first phase of that project, the end of the first round of meetings with the client to discuss that project, milestones within the project. Don't take much to celebrate. It could just be that you all go to the pub on a Friday. It could be a virtual meeting where you refuse to talk about work and everyone gets a £10 Amazon voucher. Appreciating milestones within a team will build their performance to a level you will not achieve without this. Pointing out to someone that their perseverance, their expertise, their input is what's led to the success of that part of a project is massive. It means that keep up the fantastic work just becomes an encouragement rather than something that weighs you down. So to point out that dividends in relationship terms are massive. It's worth pointing out that conversely, if you ignore or fail to acknowledge people, it might not have an immediate impact, but over time, it will destroy that team. It will destroy your relationship with your peers. It will destroy a relationship within management, and it will quite often contribute to the team completely imploding. So wherever you are within that team structure, look to the person that you work with every day and just find something that they've done that warrants you saying, that was awesome, thank you. So I'm afraid this slide starts some more of those wonderful management stroke psychobabble buzzwords. We're going to talk about leveraging intrinsic motivators, except we're not going to make it that complicated because that is straight out of that buzzword dictionary. But the component parts of intrinsic motivators are so important, and they're not that difficult to remember when you take away the silly title. This involves tapping into internal drives, and I don't mean in your database or in your system. The internal drive in every person that is part of that team. Internal drives inspire individuals to engage in activities because they find them inherently rewarding or enjoyable. This approach will significantly enhance staff engagement, satisfaction, and overall productivity in the workplace. We're going to run through some key elements and strategies to most effectively leverage intrinsic motivators. It's important we focus on 3 key elements: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So we've lost that slide already. So intrinsic motivators are out of the window. We are just looking at autonomy. And we all know what it means. How does that appear in a team? How do you make people autonomous? Well, you don't make someone autonomous. What you do is give people the freedom to make themselves autonomous. Give people the freedom to make decisions about their work. Enhance their sense of ownership and responsibility. I mean, we have so many neurospicy people within our industry. Autonomy for those people will get productivity levels you cannot imagine if you try to force them to fit your neurotypical boxes. So this is achieved by letting them set their own goals. And you obviously have an overall target or project as a team, but the incremental steps towards that within the team can be better set by each individual. Allowing someone the autonomy to choose their task order, to decide how to complete those things, plays to all of their strengths. And they're back in control of a part of their existence. By giving someone the tools to be autonomous, you give them the freedom to work to the best of their abilities. You will always get the best out of someone who isn't being micromanaged or forced into a box with your expectations. And conversely, friends and family should have the same thing. It's just as important to give the people around us in our personal lives that ability. It produces the most beneficial effects, and equality is born from autonomy. Mastery always sounds a little bit archaic, but encouraging continuous learning and development will always help team members improve their skills. Improving skills or becoming more skilled in an existing skill is a sense of accomplishment that you're not going to achieve unless you give people this. Providing opportunities for training or mentorship or challenging projects that will support their growth gives them the opportunity to master their craft. I have a fabulous and most obvious example of how this can happen. If you have a small team, user groups are always going to be a fountain of knowledge, a great place for networking, a fabulous place to share knowledge. They're really great for exchanging stories, solving problems, learning from others' experiences. User groups give you a platform to share tips and tricks, to pick up new skills, and the things that you pick up, you take back to your team. Career advancement doesn't necessarily come from user groups, but participating in conferences, speaking at events, just tuning into a Teams meeting to listen to an event is going to give you access to mentors, to collaborators. It's going to give you access to other individual takes on the same subject that you're passionate about. Skills that you learn at a conference, you then take back to the team. So from a management's perspective, user groups and conferences are most important. But they also give you as an individual the chance to provide your feedback on products and services. You get to communicate directly with devs and companies, which starts to mean that your insights, which are completely unique, start to shape the future of the technologies that you use. That's an ownership that will just keep you going for years. As management, if you're providing access to training and new qualifications, you also need to foster an environment where continuous learning and that curiosity to learn is encouraged. Outside of our work environment, we should also be looking for a purpose within our social groups as well as in the wider world. And that might look like taking a class to learn a new skill, using Duolingo to learn a new language, or just keeping up with all the latest news around us. Again, if we feed our souls, we will perform better in every aspect. Purpose is something that's a little bit abstract and not always easy to define, but connecting team members' work to a larger mission or a goal can give them a sense of meaning and fulfillment. Clearly communicating the positive impact of their work and how it contributes to the organization's outward success can also help them to see a value in what they do. And I have an example that always makes me smile, and it's an American company called Zappos, who've been around for years, and they're a shoes and clothing manufacturer, seller, which is not exactly, purposeful. They decided several years ago that instead of looking at themselves as a shop, as a business that sold shoes and clothing, they wanted to deliver happiness to their customers. When you get your head around that, what they've done is stop it just being about the clothes and the shoes. That purpose has not just led to one of the most loyal customer bases with a retention rate of over 75%, which is almost unheard of. It's also fostered an environment where employees are more engaged because they're not simply making clothes or selling clothes. They're helping people to deliver happiness as a higher purpose to one of the most basic work skills in retail. So if we start to implement these intrinsic motivation programs, we start to create a work environment that fosters internal satisfaction and enjoyment. Once you have that, you lead to a more engaged and productive team. If you have an engaged and productive team who communicate with one another, resentments don't build, stress levels don't necessarily rise untapped, and everyone starts to feel that they have a degree of control over where they are within their team. Something the Beard often does that makes people think of that larger purpose, and I've heard him do this, is to ask a dev team or the DBA team to actually think about who their real customers are, to take that further outside their team, to look at not just the team or the C-levels, but to look at the customer, the client, the person who signs the checks, to actually look that you have the DBA team, you have developers, DevOps, management. There's so many more parts of this team that are so much more removed from that individual within that team, that making people actually stop and take stock of the people around them starts to give them a purpose within that structure. And within our social units, we still use this tool. We probably do it without thinking, but we don't take the people around us for granted because we look at what they bring to our life. We might not have defined it as purpose, but if we really think about it, we see a difference. If we think about it, we see what we otherwise would not have had. And it means that we help not just to help people see their value, but we help ourselves to see ours. These are all positive dynamic tips. These are all things that you can take away. These are all tools that can be used at any level. These are all tools that you can use up in the chain or down in the chain. And they're all tools that we can take away for our personal lives. But within your environment, don't forget mental health. It wouldn't have been a session of mine if we didn't have some sort of a nod to mental health. Teams are now working out that mental health resources should be available. Management are now learning that they do have a responsibility to provide these resources, to make sure that there are employee mental health well-being, to give people time off, to give people accessible resources to help with their mental health, to give your staff teams mental health or duvet days. I have the best analogy. I've yet to find a better one, and I want everyone to take this back to their teams. The conversations about mental health should be no different to the conversation you have around the person who comes back on Monday morning with a broken leg, because none of you would take a minute to ask what was going on. Everyone would be sympathetic. Everyone would help. Everyone below and above in the team would make allowances. They'd remember even once the plaster cast had come off that that person had a broken leg. They wouldn't expect them to be running a marathon the day the plaster cast came off. So they would continue to support that person even when there was nothing visible to show for that injury. I want to see a time within the work environment where mental health conversations are just as easy for us to all have as that broken leg thing. And I want people to understand that practicing positive selfishness, which is a very, very powerful neurolinguistic programming tool, is vital. We're all brought up and geared to believe that selfishness is a negative. It's a bad thing. Our parents said to us when we were small, don't be selfish, share your toys. Oh, as an adult, I'm saying do be selfish. Absolutely be selfish. Take time to go and spend an hour in the bath with a glass of wine and a book. Take a day off to go walking in the hills. Take a day off to stay in bed and watch Netflix. But be selfish about ourselves, because if we don't look after ourselves, no one else is going to do it for us. And if we haven't looked after ourselves, we can be no use to the people around us that need our help. So practicing positive selfishness is something we should all be doing. So tools in your toolbox that are all quite simple and straightforward, but the fire hose was the title. Fire hose in your industry never stops. Its pressure ramps up. Stop trying to keep up with it, because you never will. You will get washed away by that pressure. So know what you know, and know that that is good enough. Know enough to meet your job requirements and focus those skills as needed. If necessary, seek further training, but never take on anything more than you have bandwidth to focus on. Don't try to keep up with everything. Your industry changes so much, so quickly, that you never will. Don't allow yourself to be pressurized into taking on more than you know you can cope with, because the only person who will suffer will be you. Management are starting to understand that sharing responsibilities around team members, sharing skills and knowledge is a far healthier way to build a team than expecting every single person within that team to have all of those requisite skills. So it's really not rocket science. I mean, obviously the slide says it is, because she was, and most of you know who this is. But it's not new. Most of you know most of these things. All I'm doing is reminding you how to use them. For the team leaders, for management, for everyone involved in the work environment, for your core friends and family teams, your next circle out, and then everyone else around that is important to you. Use these tools and you will foster better agreements, boundaries, and relationships. We start to do this within our work life and our personal lives. We start to manage burnout in a way that it should stop becoming an issue. So this really is what it says. We live in a world where there is a constant fire hose of new things to learn, new features, new products, new tactics, especially with AI that is obviously coming to take all of your jobs. It feels like everyone else is keeping up, so we feel that we have to as well. But here's the truth. You don't have to keep up with everything and everybody. Focus on what matters most to you and to your work. Take that with passion into your team. Remember that the people who thrive within organizations aren't actually the ones that chase every new trend, but those who find a purpose in their work, in their niche, in their specialty. The ones who set clear boundaries, they agree on expectations, they keep the conversation going, they recognize efforts, they focus on what truly motivates themselves and the people around them. Most importantly, the most healthy people out there are the ones who have learned to practice positive selfishness. And that absolutely means looking after yourself first. Take a day off, take an hour off, go and have a bath with your glass of wine, and do it guilt-free. Good downtime, a healthy diet, hobbies, exercise, fresh air, they're all essential. Don't forget the mental health of yourself and those around you. Make sure everyone has access to the resources and support they need, and keep working to remove the stigma around mental health conversations. duvet days, the mental health days, sofa days, whatever you call them, take them, use them, make them available, because none of this is rocket science and none of it is new. It is simply a reminder to use the tools you already have, whether you're a team member, a manager, a leader. My bottom line to you will always be, look after yourself first, because no one else will, and you are no use to anyone else if you burn out. Once you've done that, then you're in a position to look after the team around you. And don't be afraid to be excellent to each other at all times. So thank you for listening to me waffle on about this. Does anybody have any questions?